Alright, so book 2 of the series, The Drawing of the Three, is a hell of a step up. Now, I could go and call this, in a sense, The Gunslinger Part 2, even though it's not really as much about Roland. The first book is an introduction to the series. The second book, The Drawing of the Three, ultimately winds up being a lot of setup material for the next book. The most of what we're doing here is we're starting to establish a status quo of who's going to be joining Roland on his quest for the Dark Tower. In which case, oh, by the way, there are spoilers with this one, so if you haven't watched the first video or you haven't read this, come back and, check this out. Alright, so book 2, The Drawing of the Three, will take place, according to the prologue of the book, which is very aptly titled An Argument. It recaps the events of the first book and kind of presents some things that were not there. Now, this could either be some contradictions, or it could just be telling us, what the hell has been going on this entire time. But Roland, apparently, after his encounter with the Man in Black and the reading of the cards, has been asleep for 100 years. And he awakens and resumes his journey on towards the Dark Tower, and he comes along a beach, which is going to be the majority of where the story, at least in Midworld, will take place, is a beach. And along the way of traveling on this beach, he will encounter 3 doors, which are just seemingly floating in midair for his benefit. And the drawing of the 3 are 3 people who are drawn from our world into Roland's world, from different, from the same where, but from different winds. And the way that each of these doors works is that Roland can open up and step into the mind of one particular person from each of these winds, sort of control their actions, and bring them, and eventually learn how to bring some other things from the where, which in this case is New York City, over into his time. We get 3 characters which are brought up. The 3 characters are Eddie Dean in the first door from New York in 1986. We get Odetta Holmes from 1964 New York, and we get Jack Mort from, I believe it is 1975 New York. And we get a lot of revelations too, especially concerning the last one momentarily. The character of Eddie Dean, about the time that we get with him, he's smuggling drugs and is a heroin addict who is working for a drug lord named Enrico Balazar. And Roland has to bring him into this world, and which results in a massive shootout that takes place, and Eddie, who is eventually brought over into our world, and at the same time that they're sitting on the beach, they have these gigantic mutant lobsters which are dwelling in the waves, which happen to also take off a couple of Roland's fingers and severely poison him. So this really puts him at a disadvantage. And it's kind of interesting to see Roland, when he used to be the quick draw back in the first book, is severely handicapped, and he really has to learn how to overcome that handicap badly. With the introduction of the character of Eddie, this started off being a character who I really might not have liked, but as time goes on, he's a smart ass and is always running his mouth, so there is some way to like him. The Odetta character, who is a very dangerous addition to the group because she has a split personality named Detta Walker, and she's a black woman who is paraplegic. She suffered a terrible accident where she fell into a train track and her legs were cut off just below the thighs, and she's rolled around in a wheelchair. So they not only have to deal with Eddie's withdrawals from the heroin, they also have to deal with this schizophrenic woman, or actually a woman with a dissociative identity disorder. And then we get the third, who is Jack Mort, and Jack has a very large connection to Jake from the first book, which is brought up. And I'm going to say right now, reading about that character is a step inside of a sick mind. But there is some justice to be dealt out to bad characters throughout this book, and there will be quite a lot to get into. Mostly this is a continuing story, and it's, you know, kind of setting up the status quo of those who will be traveling with Roland throughout this story. But no, all in all, this is a very interesting book, and Roland begins to become acquainted with some of the things of our world, and it's pretty good. I like it, and if you can manage to get through the first book and manage to get into this one, the Wastelands will be much more of a payoff, and when I get to reviewing that. So if you like the first book, do check this one out, and that's really all I can say about it without giving too much away.